Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bodied, a Cloud9 fancast. As always, I'm your host, Havokpus, and I'm with my co-host, Frozencreek.
Hello, hello. I am here and ready for another season of LCS. Um, I guess I never really looked at the schedule, but there's no break between lock-in and LCS, so we are back at it this week for 3 games because of the shortened season, or the shortened first half of the split due to MSI qualification and playoff purposes. So a lot to look forward to in these next 6 weeks.
Yeah, at least we get one more game to watch per week, which I think is always good.
Yeah, it is on Friday night, which kind of sucks, because I'm normally, in a normal year, I'm busy on a Friday night, but thanks to COVID, I guess there's time to do stuff.
Now you're just so free. You can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but we out here.
But before we get to talking about league stuff, we got some other stuff to talk about. Mostly a lot of little tournament things going on with some of our other teams. CS:GO, who we talked a bit about last episode, with especially with their, we have a new player to kind of replace Woxic. They actually managed to make it to the quarterfinals of CS Summit. They did lose 1-2 to Fnatic, but they at least looked like they were playing a lot better. It looks like they were at least kind of more cohesive, which is always good.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the Fnatic game, but whichever game was before it, I watched some of.
I can't remember which one it was before. They
But
I think one game they had in the CS Summit, it was like a crazy, like they were down like 13-2, and then they came back and won that game, which
oh wow,
was like extremely stressful, but somehow they managed to do that.
impressive. So I feel like that's kind of a common thing in Cloud9 CS:GO, because I think there was another game. I think it was the map I watched that they blew a huge lead. And still ended up winning, I think, but and whatever it was, not a big deal, because I can't think of I can't think of which game it was. So
Yeah. But the team did look good. They looked better. I'm really curious to see how they take kind of this momentum and they have to like go about like approaching like the next event. I don't know when they're playing next, but it'll be interesting to see how they go forward. I'm thinking that if Zeppa has more time with the team and Elma Putty can figure out like how to like really improve the team with what we have. I could see it being, like a actually competitive roster instead of just us going into games and just getting beaten all the time.
yeah, that it would be a pretty big upgrade.
Yeah, that's always good. We can't really say much now, but I'd assume probably in like maybe like 4 months or so we can probably get a good idea of where the team is headed after that. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. I don't really have much else to say on it. We can talk about Valorant.
Yep, let's do that.
The blue and white team did play in the Challengers Open Qualifier for the super big Valorant tournament. White team failed to qualify, I think, a little bit earlier than blue did. Blue had like one match against Immortals, and we like barely lost. Each map was like I think 13-11 score-wise, so it was extremely close. Also to note, Zeta got into North America, I think, literally the day before the event started. So
Oh yeah, okay.
so this is like he is probably jet lagged. He's tired. he does not have a lot of just a lot of time practicing and playing with the team, so it's honestly with like how little time like he had to do in terms of like rushing through getting his visa and him having to get him in North America, so he could play with the team and everything, and to just be like literally like probably a game or two, like a round or two away from qualifying for the event, and against Immortals, who's a really strong team. I think our prospects look pretty good. I'm not sure when the next qualifier is for us to try to like get into the event. I imagine that they'll have multiple, kind of like what they did with the that First Strike Invitational. But I think our prospects are looking pretty good, especially once we have some more practice time with Zeta, because we look a lot stronger. Like, our players seem kind of unlocked more, because we're not having to cater to what Tens has to do and how Tens wants to do things. Now it's Mitch is the carry who can really pop off, and Relics is kind of the secondary carry, and Vice seems to be a good IGL, and Leaf is doing well, and Zeta is a really nice supportive player because he plays Breach really well, and I think that him being able to play Breach, and I think he also plays Sova maybe, it really kind of opens us up to being able to use different agents for different stuff. So I'm really excited to see how this blue roster kind of works out for the next few months, and they also still have sort of that six, that hidden sixth player that they kind of teased but haven't yet to announce yet. So I'm really excited if we can not only qualify for this tournament but do really well in upcoming events with this new kind of configuration.
Yeah, super hype about that. I haven't had much of a chance to watch it because I was watching CD9 White, which didn't quite bode quite as well. Katie played really well, but besides that, it was a little bit disappointing watching their last match.
They did go kind of far, though. They went farther than I think most people expected them to go, which was at least good. I think that's good. I think that I don't know what their scrim situation is like, but it would really be nice if they did scrim the blue team more. I think that would be really valuable for them. Plus you can kind of hide strats from other teams. I really want the white team to actually qualify for a tournament. I really want to see a competitive like blue versus white match. I don't want to see not like the content games where it's like, oh, we're gonna play blindfolded, we're gonna play with opposite hands. No, I want to see them fucking try-harding. I want to see them give everything they got to prove what the stronger Cloud9 Valorant team is.
Yeah,
make it happen.
That would be super hype. Yeah, that would be super hype. I will say that I feel like the white team is getting pretty close to like being pretty good, but I feel like they're just missing like some strategy, like overall like strategy and tactics that are holding them back just a little bit.
Yeah,
because sometimes they pop off if they all play well in visually, but they seem to just be missing like that teamwork to take or rounds in maps if they don't all perform on like on an individual level.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue of if everyone's not playing 100%, it looks like they definitely struggle a lot more. And that's kind of the trap that I think you kind of fall into in general with these kind of shooter games. If like if one person's aim is off, that can really cost you a game. So it really sucks. I'm kind of hoping that eventually, the like the tournament landscape at least kind of molds out to maybe just having individual, like more like skill-based events. It could just be that the white team is always having to play above their skill ceiling, and so it makes it twice as hard. I'm not saying that they're like bad players or anything. It's just that there are a lot of really good teams out there, and sometimes you just have to play a lot of really good teams. It'd be nice to maybe see a tournament with like them and more like comparable skill level, just to kind of see, because I think when they usually play around their weight class, you know, quote unquote, they look really good and they look really strong. I think it's just when they have to fight above that, they seem to struggle a lot more, which is understandable.
Yeah, and they've beat some good teams still.
Oh yeah,
like
they beat Renegades,
United.
Yeah.
So it's not that they can't perform with the big boys. It's just they seem to have a hard time consistently performing at that level.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't think you can blame them, considering like trying to having to perform consistently like above your normal level of skill and difficulty. That's really hard to do. You know, like
Yeah.
So I think like them being able to like pull it off every once in a while, like against United, against Renegades, it shows that they definitely have the potential to do it. It's just it's going to be really difficult for them to like consistently level up, and you're probably going to see them kind of stumble a lot as they get better and better. But I want to see them do better. I want to see them do well. I want them to succeed. They're really fun to watch.
I feel like performing against good competition is going to be better long term for them, because a lot of them are still super young. Like Jazzykins is what, 16 or 17 or something, like.
Yeah, something like that.
So I would like to see them play in a women's tournament too, but I feel like they're good enough to keep competing against all of the guys too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that they can definitely hang in there. So hopefully they can do well in the future and keep at it and not get too discouraged. But that's about it. we don't have a lot to talk about today. We can talk about the lock-in tournament, since
yeah, it was a relatively sparse non-League of Legends week.
Yeah. For once, there's not a lot of crazy news.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there will be at 2 p.m. today, right as like our podcast is like being uploaded. But
yeah.
For now, no, we're good. Yeah. So Cloud9 second place in the first, what seems like it's going to be an annual lock-in tournament right before the LCS regular season starts. I feel like the first thing we should talk about is if we feel like it was a success. Cloud9 played 17 total games, which is almost a full split.
I was going to mention that number, actually, because I think in terms of what the lock-in I think did, and I think did specifically for us, it's basically we got a lot of free practice in high-pressure situations. We were also able to kind of see, hey, how are the teams going to draft and play around, you know, kind of their new rosters somewhat, and we can kind of see how everyone's kind of prepared for with the new items and the changes in the meta. And hitting second place, I think, is pretty good. And we took Team Liquid to 5 games, which I think is really fantastic. So I think that I think we definitely got to see sort of improvement in the changes like as the tournament went on. So I think that's really good, and I think it was really valuable practice for us.
Yeah, and all 17 games, we got to see tons of champions from everyone except pretty much Perks. He stuck to like 4, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
We saw Lulu, Karma, Aurelia, Aatrox, Malphite from Fudge, among a few others. Blabber got to play Lilia, Talia, Olaf, Udyr, and I'm sure there's one or two in there. We got to see the return of Svenna, and Tom Kench in the bot lane. So I think it was overall good. I'm disappointed that we weren't able to pull it out. but I think that practice is going to be extremely good for us in the long run. I do think it kind of sucks for CLG and whoever else only played four games, because that sucks for them. Cloud9 got so much more stage time in practice, while other teams were kind of just at home scrimming each other because they got knocked out. But that just kind of is what it is. So are you happy with the second place finish, or did you want more, or did you think that it would be overachieved?
Um, that's a tough question. I think that you to really evaluate it. I think that you kind of have to look at how everyone kind of performed. I think that, uh, and you have to kind of look at it more as sort of an individual basis rather than the team overachieving. Um, I think Blabber, Sven, and Vulcan really pretty much like performed at expectations or exceeded expectations with their play. I mean, our bot lane is looking like the best bot lane in the league, just with how those two specifically play and they play together. And Blabber is looking to be just as strong as ever, with maybe a bit more temperament and sort of how he approaches things. It didn't look like he was just running and killing himself as much. So that's really good. I think for Perks and Fudge, though, I think they definitely kind of underperformed. Um, Fudge, I think.
I think, or, or do Perks first.
Okay.
And then.
Yeah, we can. Fudge is probably the bigger
we
talking
can
point.
talk about Fudge together.
I think Perks kind of underperformed because I was kind of expecting him to play a lot better than he did and get a lot more like kills and do a lot more stuff than what he did. A lot of what he did in his games was essentially just like farm mid lane really hard and get like a good CS lead over his opponent, and then just kind of try to help out in team fights. He didn't do anything spectacular, and he didn't really do anything that I would be like, oh, did you see what Perks did? Did you see, it was mostly just me going like, okay, Perks is just doing what what's kind of expected of a mid laner, but he didn't really branch out of that. I did listen to some comms from those brain check videos, and it seems like he does take a lot more of a vocal role, especially after sort of the early game, and maybe that's what he's bringing to the table more, is more of kind of a secondary shot caller kind of thing, and helping people like navigate through fights and when to do objectives and stuff. But his play didn't really blow my mind or anything, especially when with his champion pool he only played like four champions, so it wasn't like he brought anything out super crazy or super specific that was like wowing me.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that. I will say there were times where I felt like he was over farming side lanes. I can't think of what game it was. It might have been 100 Thieves or TSM, but he was on Yone, so I guess it was 100 Thieves. And like he would show up to a fight super late just because he was off pushing a wave for no reason. It would TP down, and that was a little bit disappointing because it lost us a game or two.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't Yone, but I feel like he was almost always doing the right thing, and he never really did anything to lose us a game outside of one of the first 100 Thieves matches.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing Perks probably has to work on is just like his teamwork and how he synergizes with the team. It seems like there were a few times throughout the tournament, especially probably against 100 Thieves and Team Liquid, where he just seemed to be kind of off a step from the play, and he seemed kind of like not connected with everyone else on what was going on and what they wanted to do. So I think that's something that's definitely just going to have to be worked on through time. I think he definitely looked better than like him against Team Liquid. He looked way better than what he did at the start of the tournament playing against Evil Geniuses. So I think that there was definitely just some improvement throughout this tournament. So I think that that's really good. I really want to see him step up though, because he is, he's Perks. He is this world-renowned mid laner. He has multiple trophies. He is, a veteran leader among League of Legends in the professional scene. He needs to really be performing a lot better, especially when it's like, hey, this org just kind of burnt some bridges and we spent a lot of money to make sure that you can play with us. You should probably play a bit better and kind of, make sure you're worthy of the whole $11 million contract or how much it was.
Yeah, and I think that the lock-in, it was a good experience for all of these guys to play together, and like bonus points for there being 13 knockout games and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 being against elimination. So all important big games to playing together on a stage, and I think that they'll have a lot to work on just between Sunday and Friday.
Yeah, I think also at least one benefit that we have from Perks is he definitely is a clutch player. Like watching us play 100 Thieves and Team Liquid when we were down 2 games in the series, he definitely came through, and it looks like he definitely played a lot harder versus the first 2 matches. I will say though, and this is sort of an aside, and we can kind of talk about this a little bit more probably after we talk about Fudge, actually, and we can kind of talk about our expectations for the regular season. It does have me kind of worried that it took us 2 games in the semifinals and finals matches to really come alive and actually play. That does have me kind of worried, but we can talk about that a little bit later. What were your thoughts on Fudge and how he played?
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about Fudge. I'm not sure.
Everyone had a lot to say about Fudge over the weekend.
And like I was extremely disappointed with the desk and the caster desk and such, and how they talked about Fudge. They kind of just spent all this time like talking shit about him and calling him bad, as opposed to like going through content and being like, oh yeah, hey, Fudge died here because he did this, or Fudge was smart here because he did this, or Speak or Closer was hard camping Fudge all game, and that's why he was down 30 CS and 2 levels at some point, and they focused more on just calling him bad rather than talking about why he was behind. And like, I'm not against criticizing him in a way, because I do think that he needs to farm a little bit better, but part of that is also because he was playing enchanters, and I can't imagine that he's put as many games into Karma and Lulu top as he has Aatrox or Aurelia or even Malphite.
Yeah, I think part of this tournament was actually just kind of figuring out what champions work for him in his champion pool, because stuff like his Camille and his Aurelia in that Malphite game, where he was playing a tank, he looked a lot more comfortable, and he looked a lot more versatile and and strong versus when he was playing against something that maybe wasn't working as well. He was also getting camped a lot, and I think that's just going to happen throughout the course of the season. He's the newest player. He's a very young player. He's really green when it comes to playing on the LCS stage. Teams are going to naturally exploit that. So, it's that's gonna happen. I think he showed a lot of fortitude in sticking with it and taking it on the chin and not letting it rattle him, because I think I know that me getting camped every game, it definitely gets me, but one thing I will say, his laning needs a lot of work, and I think that's to be expected when you're a new player coming into the LCS and having to play against top laners who are like twice to 3 times as strong as the top laners that you've been dunking on in Academy for like the past year or two. that's going to need a lot of work. But his teamwork when playing with the team, in the mid and late game when we're able to kind of play as 5 and whatnot, he plays things really well, and he seems to be like always be communicating with the team. He's always like saying like, hey, here's some important cooldowns that I'm going to have in like a couple seconds, so get ready. He's always kind of communicating things. I think that in that aspect he's really valuable and he's really good. So I think that you can really carve out something great with him. You just need to mold him a little bit more.
Yeah, and I thought that his mental game it was insanely strong throughout this whole thing. I'm sure he's disappointed about Game 5 against Team Liquid, and he probably feels like shit. But like, Santorin, his gank super early on is actually what won that game for Team Liquid, and it wasn't so much that Fudge lost that early trade so badly. I think LS did some video where he worked with Aurelia or Gangplank main, and they found that the Aurelia can still come back in that lane if there's not like a super high amount of jungle pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And Santorin came top like immediately on Udyr, while Blabber it was farming Gromp or something bot side. So I don't even think that was entirely his fault, but
no, yeah, I agree that like, he did misplay the lane. I think that that has to be stated, but it wasn't. He could have maybe gotten more help. I think that, kind of circling around to Blabber, I think one thing that he needs to work on is how he plays in the early game, because I noticed a lot in the games that he played. He spends a lot more time farming, at least this season, than maybe he did last season, because he does a good job of it. He's always seems to be like up in CS and gold versus
by quite a bit
the opposing jungler. But I think that what he's sacrificing is just pressure on the map. Past like 15-20 minutes, every time I look at the scoreboard, we're down. It's always like 1 tower to 3. Oh, we're down like a couple of dragons. And it's like, to me that says that like he's prioritizing his own gold, which especially for a carry jungler player like him, that's important to do, so he can have an item lead to when you get to those big 5v5 fights. That's C9 style. But when you're sacrificing a good portion of the map in terms of standing gold on taking those first 3 hour towers and taking a Rift Herald or taking a couple of dragons, I think it definitely kind of hurts us sort of transitioning from the early game to the mid game. And I think he definitely needs to work on that and work on his macro some, because I think that is kind of a weak point for him still. It was kind of a weak point for him last year, and that's kind of something that's kind of carried over. Yeah,
and I'm looking at Oracle Elixir right now because I hadn't thought about that much, and you're completely right. Our first Baron rate was 53%. Our first tower was 41%. Our first 3 towers was 35% of games. Our Herald was 44% of Heralds, and we got first Dragon 53% of the time. So I think you're right about that.
Yeah, it's at least something that I noticed, and I think that's something that I think we can definitely fix as the season goes on. This tournament's probably really useful just in that, we have some analysts that probably got like a lot of data, so we can just say like, oh, hey, look, we're not using the map as effectively in the early game as we should. We should definitely try to fix that. So I think that's something that can maybe be fixed. We'll have to see. But I guess transitioning more to sort of our expectations for the rest of the season and with our upcoming matches.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Fudge. So talking about Fudge again super fast. even though we were expecting more from him on a personal level, I still think he did an incredible job at this tournament because he ran through a very experienced group of top laners like Someday, Huni, Someday, who was arguably the best player in the world a few years ago. Huni, who won Worlds with SKT, I believe, right?
Maybe?
Or did they lose in final?
No, I don't think Huni won Worlds.
Okay.
I can't remember.
And he wasn't starting at that point, I don't think. But still, he was on SKT. Impact, who won Worlds with SKT and has countless LCS titles. And Alfari, who doesn't have a lot of trophies, but he was the outstanding top laner in LEC last year. He went through all of these guys, and he still finished second place among them for the tournament. And I think that should be seen as very good for him, as opposed to like all these people shitting on him for, quote, being bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think he definitely does. He needs his props for being able to kind of hold the line and not just be like super disastrous. I guess minus that one Aurelia game. If you're looking at the whole thing, that game notwithstanding, he held the line pretty well, and he didn't get into a super big deficit or anything. He was able to go even, if not a tiny bit behind, and that's with increased jungle pressure with everyone trying to camp him. So I think that he definitely needs some credit there, and I think that if he can take that and then expound upon it, he can be an even better top laner. But
and his Malphite game, it was really good too.
Yeah.
And okay, sorry, one last thing I forgot. Promise this time. This was also Raynover's first 4 weeks as a head coach, so he's learning on the job too.
Yeah, and that goes also for like Mithy and all the other coaches. So.
Okay, now for the first 6 weeks of LCS. So, they are playing a full quote-unquote split, so 18 games, but they're crunching it into 6 weeks as opposed to 9 because they need to have a representative for MSI, and they're doing a big tournament again for that. So we have a shortened regular season first half of the season, but if you did forget, the whole year is counted as one split. So our first 18 games and these first 6 weeks count all year.
Yeah, we're kind of going like baseball, where we play through the whole year basically.
Yeah.
I personally like it just because we're playing an extra day. That just means more league for me, which is really nice.
Yeah, agreed.
Looking at our first week of games, which is the 5th, 6th, and 7th. On the 5th, we play Golden Guardians. Kind of a late game at 9 p.m. Eastern. TSM on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then at 6 p.m. Eastern, we play against Immortals. So, and one thing I wanted to circle back on with what I kind of mentioned earlier, during this Lacken tournament, we were kind of down by a game or a couple of games in our best of series before we really came alive. And that's one thing that I'm kind of worried about going into these games, because these are all best of ones. The whole year, outside of these tournaments or whatever, they're best of ones. And if the team can't come out the gate swinging and come alive and like, okay, we have this strategy we're going to execute and we're going to play around, and if they're trying to kind of still figuring that out, I think that's going to make for kind of a bumpy season, especially in these early matches where you're still kind of, it's early days and you're figuring out like what exactly your system is and how you're going to approach things. So I think that this week's going to be kind of difficult. We did kind of get a grace period of only, I guess out of the 3, TSM's probably going to be our hardest opponent. Golden Guardians and Immortals, I don't think should be that tough of an opponent, considering that the Immortals roster didn't fully play, and the Golden Guardians roster has, outside of Stixay, really just a bunch of academy, kind of newbie players. So I think that we at least have sort of a softball start to our first week. But I don't think we can really underestimate anyone, and I think we have to just treat every game like a challenge and make sure we go in ready to play instead of like what we did in the Lakin tournament where we kind of had to warm up a lot just to really show what we can do.
Yeah, and there's not time to learn how the other team is going to pick and ban.
Yeah, exactly.
And play each game. So it is a new challenge for the team, and have three straight days of games. I do agree our early first 3 games are probably the easiest stretch of games that we're going to have for a while. TSM obviously took a game off us in lock-in, but they're beatable. We already beat Immortals, and we did not play Golden Guardians, so I think we have pretty good chance against all of them. So
I will put an asterisk against Immortals in that for our match they were using I think like 2 or 3 academy players, because I don't think
that is true.
They didn't have Xerxes. I don't think they had their support either. And I think they maybe didn't have. Oh, who else did they not have? Oh yeah, they had to play with Keith instead of I think their AD carry. So
yeah,
we kind of played against a not full strength Immortals roster, but I think we should be able to play against Immortals, especially since they'll be probably under practiced because they weren't really playing with the full squad for lock-in, and I think they'd have to settle at least maybe for like only a couple weeks of scrims. So I think we can beat them. TSM's definitely going to be hard. I think that TSM, is going to be a really interesting thing to watch. I mentioned before that Bjergsen's going to have to adjust to coaching, and he has this, this new roster that he has to kind of deal with. PoE is definitely going to be a strong point. I think they're most likely going to play through sort of the mid-jungle duo, because PoE definitely seems to gel really well with Spica. They play really hard around him, and you always also have Huni, who he can be a really good weapon, but it's from like historically in North America, it seems that teams really struggle to utilize that weapon effectively. He's had struggles on Dig and sometimes looking like this golden god that can just do anything, and then in the same split even he will look somewhat clueless and everyone will be just asking what he's doing. So I think that it'll be really interesting to see how that happens. Lost and Sword Art definitely have potential. Lost looked really good in lock-in, and he seemed like an up-and-coming AD carry that can really work, especially when benefiting through like Sword Art's leadership. So they have like all of the components to be a really strong roster. I think it's mostly going to come down to Bjergsen and if he can coach the team to really do well. So it'll be really interesting to see that match and how our team and their team kind of progress, since we're kind of rival kind of teams.
Yeah, someone on Hotline League said that TSM would be better with Haunter over Huni, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. But if you're looking to play a fun game this weekend during our 7 p.m. Match on Saturday against TSM, you can play a drinking game called Good Huni or Bad Huni, where you drink at every time he makes a bad play.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be interesting.
But I feel like this should be the type of week that we go 3-0 in.
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
TSM is good, but I think that we're better in that if it was a best of 5 that we played them in, I think that we probably would have won 3-1.
Yeah, I can agree. I think that after that initial game against TSM, we looked a lot better, and we seem to adapt a lot more. I think that in terms of drafting strategy, we have a lot of tools to work with jungle, like jungle and bot wise. Like there seems to be a huge diversity of picks to really work from. So I don't think Blabber or our bot lane has a lot of issues. Perks will probably go for go for a smaller champ pool. It seems like that doesn't seem to be bother him much. I kind of don't want to see him on Orianna. His Orianna has yet to wow me. Um, I think us will be hit hard in terms of bans. They'll probably try to check out Fudge and Perks or Fudge and Blabber, since you'll attack the weaker player as well as the stronger player. Um, I think honestly we should continue to do what I've kind of been saying, like try to make sure Galio is pick banned, because with how we play, it's just really obvious what we're going to do. We're gonna draft for like 5v5 comp. We're not gonna really go for a sort of macro oriented like 1-3-1 kind of like lane pushing strategy or anything that can really siege heavily. We're gonna opt into 5v5 team fights. So, regardless of what we pick, I think we should really pick ban Galio, because it's a really good engage disengager, and he really makes things a lot more difficult for us when it's on the other team. And when we have it, we look amazing with it. So I think that that's just something we should do. And I think we should just try to make sure Fudge doesn't lose, doesn't hemorrhage in lane, and then make sure our bot lane and maybe our mid lane can really get ahead with our jungler. And if we don't hemorrhage neutral objectives and stuff, I think we have a really good chance of winning.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the meta for now, because 11.3 didn't really change all that much. So for now, this is kind of the games that we're just gonna be watching.
Yeah. Yeah, until especially until that Staff of Flowing Water nerf that kind of probably dissuades people from playing those kind of champions up top lane, or doing like the double support bot lane thing. That's still definitely much a threat. We tried to do it somewhat in the lock-in. I don't think it really gave us much success, since I think it just kind of lowered our damage output, and it made it a lot harder for us to really go into those 5v5s, since we lose out on engage tools and DPS, and we're trying to kind of opting to just sort of out heal, and it doesn't seem like that's sort of we're just not that kind of team that can really do that effectively.
Yeah. Or now that I'm thinking about it, one of the big things I've seen watching China play is that Senna farms, and she also builds a Rage Blade, which
I've heard of that being a thing, and it's
I need to read about it, because I don't know how that works.
I think it's more for on-hit damage, because Senna's auto attack speed is pretty slow. So I imagine it's to give her more on-hit damage.
And her Q might also proc it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's the adaptation that we see this week is Senna Soraka bot lane, or Senna Lulu.
I could see it. I mean, especially if Sven is playing Senna, because Sven is really, really good. I'm really glad that she's back in the meta, because I remember at the start of last year in spring, he was utterly dominating on her and just crushing it. And I think it's the perfect champion for him, because he's not someone who likes to really be really aggressive. He likes things that can kind of just do consistent damage and have at least some safety, and she provides that perfectly, and so he's able to just do a lot with her. So if he can pick her and make that work, I think that would definitely be useful.
Yeah, it's something I would like to see this week. I guess it's also a counter for Rikara. That's the new ADC, right?
I think so.
Or no, sorry, Samira. God damn it.
Yeah, Samira. Rikara's the player,
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, Samira. So I guess Senna's a soft counter for Samira, based on what I heard from LPL this morning. So perhaps that's something that we see this weekend. But I guess the last question I have is, how do you think Cloud9 is going to finish these first 6 weeks?
That's a good question. I think we can definitely hit top 4 and be a top 4 team. The only question is where exactly we land in the top 4. I think it's going to depend on how quickly Fudge and Perks can further improve and kind of meld as a team, and how the coaching staff can train up our guys, as well as just how we can adapt to meta changes and play in this new landscape. Because a lot of the teams are different now. You know, rosters have changed. The rosters all around seem a lot stronger than last year. So it's going to be more difficult. And I think that, you know, we're just going to have to see how we handle playing best of ones with this new roster and see how it goes. You know, hopefully they don't feel too much pressure and they can just easily kind of, you know, improve and whatnot. Because they definitely need to try to hit to always being on the upswing.
I would say I'd be disappointed if we did not finish at least second place.
I can definitely see it. I think that, like, on the top of their game, they can at least hit second. I think if they struggle a lot, they could probably hit fourth. It depends on, I think, on tiny things like how Blabber is able to impact the map in the early game. You know, how Fudge plays in the early game. I think how Perks sort of plays in the later stages of the game and in playing with the team. So it's stuff like that, and I think how those consistently kind of manage to hit from game to game.
Yeah. And there's a lot of practice to be done. So
No, yeah, for sure. I think that
we'll just have to.
I think that on top of the lock-in tournament, we definitely at least have points that we can easily identify and kind of say, like, okay, we're going to work on these things, and then go from there.
Yeah, 100%. So tune in on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for your Cloud9 League of Legends this weekend.
Excitement.
All right. Talk to you later.
Later.
Bye.